Hello and welcome back to Your Dog's Not Broken.
And neither are you.
We are so happy that you've come back to join us, and we want to just say a humongous thank you to everybody who has been part of helping us launch this baby, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We really appreciate all the enthusiasm and kind words that we've gotten from the listeners so far.
Yeah, we've had comments and people sharing, and I just want to let you know that we feel the love and we're sending it right back to you as well. So, hopefully, you're enjoying the podcast, and we're trying to bring you some eye opening content and hopefully stuff that's really relatable to you, but also very different from the kind of stuff that you might be hearing on regular dog training podcasts. So, thank you for taking a walk with us into maybe pastures unknown, because this is definitely a different spin, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, no, it really is, right? We're just kind of nutshelling things and pulling back the curtain so that you can understand dog behavior from a perspective that you've probably never thought about it from before.
Exactly. So we have a caller today whose name is Joe. And Joe has one of those dogs that is just very, very friendly. Should we listen to her message?
Sure.
Okay.
Loving the show. Just wanted to get your thoughts on my dog Coco. She's a black lab, lovely, lovely dog, 4 years old. We're lucky enough to live in Edinburgh, in Scotland, and we can walk her off leash, and we've got a lovely big park where we can do that. She is typically great recall and will come back whenever we ask her, and she's lovely with other dogs as well, and will go up and is super friendly and not in their face. However, we have two dogs that she does not follow the rules with. She is obsessed with them. She will cross the park, which is like half a mile long. She will smell them and run for these dogs. She'll meet the dog. She'll lie on the back underneath the dog and just be like, "Love me, love me." And the both of these individual dogs are not at all loving Coco doing that. They are growling at her. They're furious that she's in their space, and she will not pick up the cues at all. The owner gets somewhat stressed, understandably, because their dog's getting stressed out. And I've run halfway across the park to try and get her. She won't come back. So I don't know what to do. I don't know if we can do anything. It just seems such a weird sort of thing that she's doing and quite out of character. Would love your thoughts. Thanks.
Oh, poor Joe running halfway across the field. It's so embarrassing when your dog does something like that, isn't it? And really stressful as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's the flip side of having like the nicest dog in the world sometimes.
Right. Right, exactly. It reminds me of just imagining the visual of her running across the field. It was like that viral video. Did you ever see it? The one with the guy yelling, "Fenton!" at the top of his lungs.
No, I didn't see it.
He was at a park in London, and this dog was just chasing after all these wild deer, having literally the best day of his life, and the poor guy was not having the best day of his life at all. So, but it was really, really funny. It went viral, I think, just because so many people could relate to that
Yeah.
like complete loss of control. Not like we're ever really in control anyway, but good old Fenton was having a wild time. Okay, so let's unpack this for Joe. As our podcast says, clearly her dog is not broken, but she is just a very, very friendly dog who wants to go and say hello to everyone. And she is especially choosing two dogs that don't really want to hang out with her. And it's causing some stress for those dogs. And it's also causing some stress for the dog's guardian and for Joe as well. So, what do you think is going on here? Socially, emotionally, biologically? Let's get into that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like her story actually reminds me a little bit of this moment that I had with Early, my Great Pyrenees, when she was just a like 8, 9 week old puppy, and I introduced her to two of my staff's English cream golden retrievers, and she was like, "What is wrong with them? Like, why are they throwing themselves at me and like groveling and leaping and whining?" Like, and that's a good starting point for what I wanted to say about the kind of ethology of this because Great Pyrenees are not as domesticated as retrievers like Coco. And so,
Just 1 second, Great Pyrenees are livestock guardians, right? So they're used to being
yeah.
out in pastures and looking after flocks of sheep and goats and whatever. So they don't have that goofball mentality that maybe the retrievers have.
Yeah, they tend to have a little bit more serious nature, like a little bit more socially reserved, especially with
Yeah,
strangers, right? Like wild animals would be, because it's smart, because you don't know whether like friend or foe, so you should be a little cautious on the front end and kind of build up that friendship type of thing, right?
right.
But so when we select for domestication, right? So that's breeding for less fearfulness in dogs as well as less aggression in dogs. And that's like what we're pulling the strings on when we're breeding dogs for temperament, right? So the retrievers, of course, are the poster child of like dogs that we've bred for kind temperament. And what happens is this side effect of breeding for that temperament or domestication called neoteny.
You have been dung.
Okay, good,
So
good. Okay.
the word
Um,
neoteny or being neotenic, this is the word of the week. Dun, dun,
yeah,
dun.
nerdy word of the week. Yeah, so neoteny means the preservation of juvenile traits throughout adulthood.
So
That
baby
whole feeling
faces and baby
yes,
personalities, Peter Pan style.
yes.
Yes.
Big eyes, big features, like very kind of squishy affect when you look at them that you're experiencing, right? That's your oxytocin just leaking out of your body because of these little baby faces. And so we're attracted to it physically, biologically, even. And also, we really like it because those are dogs that are going to be easier around other people, strangers, kids, other dogs, etc., in terms of like not being aggressive and things that we don't really desire in our pets.
That
Yeah.
is the real upside of these dogs, isn't it? And we should
Yes.
definitely, like, at some point, we'll get into this maybe in another episode, but, like, if we are choosing dogs who are super sociable and who really love people and really love other dogs and just happy go lucky, it makes a society of dogs and humans flow a lot more smoothly than dogs that really don't want to be around people or don't want to be around other dogs. That's where we can find some friction.
Right, but the flip side of that is that you have these foolhardy kind of characters that are that person at the party, right? Being like, "Oh my god, hi, hi. Oh my gosh, it's so good to see you." And you're like, "I have no idea who you are. Why are you
Right.
talking to me? Don't hug me. Like, I don't know you." Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, it's one of those things that can be really great in a lot of those situations like you're talking about. But also it can get those dogs in some trouble. So, interesting enough, another kind of nerd fun fact here for everybody is that all dogs have a mutation on chromosome 6
Not to be
DNA.
confused with chromosome 7.
Well, there's a whole nother thing with chromosome 7. We'll get there later some
Oh,
other
that
day,
was just
right?
my joke.
That's where the
I don't know the
ADHD
difference between
chromosome thing is.
chromosome 5, 7, 20.
Gene 7R, actually. Yeah,
And there she goes,
I know.
people. I'm gonna bring her back. I'm bringing her back.
So yes, chromosome 6, there's a little mutation there in humans that actually is responsible for something called Williams-Buren syndrome. And interestingly, it also correlates with the kinds of physical features and some behavioral stuff that goes with it for those people. It's kind of like some indiscriminate friendliness, like really hyper pro-social behavior and things like that. So you can see where I'm
Yeah,
going with this with Coco, right? Going up to these dogs, the irony is that Coco probably is seeking them out, trying so hard
right.
to grovel, to
Please
kind
be
of
my
show, "Oh my
friend.
gosh, I'm
Please be
deferential.
my
I just
friend.
wanna be your friend."
Yeah, and the more she's groveling, the more she's doing that groveling behavior and turning on her back and going upside down and being very excitable like that, the more it's a turn
Yes.
off to some dogs, like you said it was with your dog. It's just like, "What are
Yeah.
you doing? It's too playful, it's too weird, too much energy." They're just trying to go on their daily morning walk.
I know, it's actually like I'm probably like the dogs that, are being run up to in this case, and I when I go to parties, right, like, and someone is, like, really over enthusiastic socially, I would be the person who'd be really uncomfortable with that.
Okay, how are we friends? How are we friends? Because I think I am that person.
Yeah, I don't know then, I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, I don't know either. But I am overly excitable and love to chat to everybody, and so, yeah, we probably are a mismatch. Some it works though.
It does. Yeah, maybe that's that whole
Much for
opposites
her.
attract thing, but not in the case of
Hey.
Coco and these dogs.
And her non-friends. No,
Right.
exactly. And I think that what you're talking about here, which is really interesting, is the sociability piece is not necessarily Coco's downfall. It is her inability to be able to read the room, right? And I think that's really important. When we talk about dogs and how they interact socially, it's like, do they actually have good social skills? Not just are they friendly, but do they know which dogs to go up to when the dog said, I've had enough, when they're saying, I'd love some more, let's go and hang out. And that's what seems to be missing in this situation.
Well, yeah, and it reminds me of, all of the conversations you and I have had in the past about like street dogs that we've both had the
Mm.
opportunity to go and, observe. And so the village dogs where they're being selected through natural selection for functioning well in those environments, which includes being street smart with other dogs, right? So the dogs who do not have those skills, they don't make it. They're selected against. And on top of that, they have the opportunity and the agency to practice and refine and hone all those skills. They have the freedom to be interacting with lots of different dogs. So they get a lot of exposure to different ages, personalities, things like that. But all within that kind of specific land race that's selecting for it.
Land race.
Land race, yeah. Land race is just a naturally selected population of animals for a given species.
So when we say naturally selected, we're just saying no human intervention.
Yes, but people may decide, "Oh, I really like that dog, so I'm gonna feed him more scraps from my cafe," which
Right.
is intervening in a way. It's favoring that dog's biological fitness. And then they may actually cull dogs. So say you get a really aggressive dog, that dog may be removed from the gene
But for the
pool.
most part, it doesn't look anything like the breeding practices that we
Right.
have here in the
Exactly.
Western world, where we're saying, "Oh, there's a cute dog. Let's breed that with this one, and let's make it, whatever, a little bit smaller so we can put it in our pocket," or anything like
Right,
that.
right. Yeah, no, totally different setup actually that they have over there.
Yeah,
And so, it makes it more functional for kind of all the dogs in that group, as a result
yeah.
of that design. And for our dogs, we are breeding for these really exaggerated different kinds of personalities. And so within that variety of all those genetics, you can have really incompatible signaling, social interests. Even if they start playing, their play styles can be so different that they can have a lot of room for misunderstanding. I wouldn't recommend just saying, "Oh, let them work it out," in the same way that might be functional for street dogs.
No, and I think you brought up a really good point. When we look at the dogs and their environment, the environment is playing such a massive role. If Joe's dog was in the Northeast in the States where I lived, she would be on leash and she wouldn't have access to meeting these dogs, so it wouldn't be an issue. If she was in India, then she would have to work this out with the dogs in the street. That's just the way that it would be. But in the UK, it becomes more complicated because dogs have this kind of halfway point of freedom. When I lived in the States, all the dogs were on leash where I lived, even though there's loads of space. Um, and the dogs have very limited social skills because they're not allowed to interact with each other, in a natural way. They're on a leash and they're restricted. And then when I went to India and I saw the all of the street dogs there, their level of social skill awareness was absolutely off the charts. So if the American dogs are like preschool level, the dogs in India are like PhD level because their
Yeah.
life depends on it. They'll see another dog and from a mile away they'll clock, an eye raise and they'll be like, "Whoops, not going over there." It's so subtle, isn't it? It's like ballet how amazing it is.
Yeah, it's sophisticated social signaling, and the thing that was so interesting to me when I first started studying, free roaming village dogs or street dogs, and then when I had the chance to go see them for myself for the first time in Argentina, was it just struck me how little conflict there is, like, how you'd think
Yeah.
that these dogs would just be fighting all the time, but because they're using something called ritualized aggression more.
Okay, we've heard of aggression, but we haven't maybe heard of ritualized aggression.
Real quickly, ritualized aggression is surprising and ironic. It's actually kind of the polar opposite of actually wanting to hurt another dog or wanting to get in a conflict. And so there are all these subtle signals, often very species specific, although some of those signals can be understood by other species as well, that indicate my feelings about boundaries. These are my resources. These are, the things that I like, things that I don't like. So warning, raised lip, that kind of hard stare, a stiffening body posture, a little bit of growling, maybe even a little bit of snarking and lunging, but without contact. Because getting in an actual altercation is very expensive because there's no vet out in nature, and those village dogs probably aren't getting the benefit of that modern veterinary medicine in a lot of cases too. So it wants to see that the animals don't engage in unnecessary conflict.
It's like the beginning, the precursor to a pub fight, isn't it? It's like, "I'm gonna take you down and you should hold me back.
Yeah,
You just
yeah,
hold me
yeah,
back." And then yes, and then they can both leave with their dignity, but it's
yeah.
like, "I've shown you how tough I am. I'm gonna knock you out." And yeah.
Ball and just, fun fact, that's called supplanting as a specific type of ritualized aggression.
I'm gonna be out of dings by this episode. We got off track here because I wanted to say about well, we didn't get off track. We went down a very good rabbit hole of ritualized aggression because I think that's really important. Anyway, what I was gonna say was I have to get back to the thought because I want to go back to the caller. In the USA, we're talking preschool levels maybe of social skills. In India and Argentina, we're talking PhD level. In the UK, we're like middle school. It's really interesting. It's like there's a real middle ground here. And so, this is where also I think it gets very tricky for the humans because the humans now play a massive role in how this interaction, potential altercation is going to go down. And I think that we can get sometimes stuck a little bit between over control, like my dog's not going to say hello to anybody, and under control, let them sort it out, which is what you said earlier. And so, depending on how we respond to that, we can make a big impact on what happens between the dogs.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what we want to do is figure out ways that we can support the dog having an experience, and then the other dogs then having an experience that could be constructive towards making better choices next time. Because this Coco probably has no idea that this is a bad idea and isn't reading the room very well. So
No.
we would need to help kind of fill in the blanks and support Coco understanding what those signals mean.
So, specifically, some suggestions for our caller, Joe. What would you say would be helpful for her and Coco to deal with that situation maybe in a better way?
So I think if the other person who has these dogs, since evidently they see them regularly, I think if that person was amenable to it, it would be interesting to approach the person maybe one day, say, "Hey, by the way, do you think that there's any way that we could try to get them together at some point, purposefully, where I will interrupt if Coco is not reading your dog's signals and remove Coco, and we can kind of repeat that and see how Coco can catch on to the idea that if you want access to these dogs and you are interested in meeting them and being friends, that you need to actually be considerate of what they're telling you, which is no,
Yeah.
this is too much.
Like scaffolding her learning about that,
Yes.
like being
Hmm.
parenting again. We're back to parenting. By the way, do
Parenting
you know when you
again.
say Coco, you're saying it with an English accent now? Coco.
Coco? Oh, I think that might
So
just be my
lovely.
Midwestern accent with the way that I say O's.
Say it again.
Coco?
Does sound English to me. Coco.
Well, but I also say things like over and supposed. And I don't know that those sound English, but I think it's the
No,
same
those
O
don't.
thing,
Maybe it's just Coco, just Coco.
just Coco.
Oh, you're British for a second. I love that idea. If she was open to it, I think that's a really great one. I had a couple of thoughts. Obviously, Joe said that she has a good recall, so it's always great to have a recall on your dog. If you have a really reliable recall, you can take them out, especially here in the UK where they can be off leash a little bit more. If you can get them back, then they get more freedom. That's really, to me, what dog training is all about, is trying to give your dog as much freedom to live the best doggy life they possibly can.
Sure,
But yeah, right?
yeah. That's what training should be
Um,
for.
the only thing that I would say is that aside from the recall, can they disengage? with other things, because it's all great teaching your dog a recall when it's a very kind of bland environment. If you're in a dog training school and you're practicing come, and it's all great and your dog's coming back to you every time, can they run away from the kid that's got the ice cream or the really attractive dog down the park? That's a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah, and I think that doesn't get talked about enough in dog training for recall.
Mm-mm.
Like you can teach a dog a recall and they can understand the game as a game that we play in class or the backyard and they can nail it every time. But for them to understand that they have to choose to come back in the face of something else they want to do is a whole different
When they don't
recipe.
want to.
Mhm.
When they don't want to. Yes,
Mhm.
totally. Um, the other thing I think it's worth thinking about is visibility risk. So if you're going to have your dog off leash, if they go around a blind corner, I think it's really smart to just have your dog with you so you can maybe scan the park for that potentially over friendly dog. He's friendly, he's just saying hi. And I think that the people that say that, um, they really do have good intentions. They're just letting you know that their dog is not a threat and not going to do anything bad. But if you have a dog who doesn't like being run up to like that, it's really, really stressful, isn't it? I
Yeah.
don't know if you've been in that situation, but I have, and you're just like, "Oh my gosh, I
Oh,
don't know."
it's
You're trying to
horrible.
find, like, a bush to hide behind or, it's
There
really stressful.
There's nothing worse than being the person with your dog on a leash and having an off-leash dog approach, especially if you know your
Yeah.
dog's not cool with it. So we need to have like good etiquette about those kinds of situations and just make sure that we have a nice system in place with our dog to call them back before they get up to another dog, if we are going to have them off leash at all.
Yeah. And for those friendly dogs, if they really get, a kick out of hanging out with other dogs, you can hire a private field. They're not expensive. And if you're
Mm.
sharing it with other dog buddies, it's a really good way to let all the dogs run around, interact, have like a little doggy party without the worry of, meeting another dog who doesn't want to say hi. And the same thing for the maybe less sociable dogs, right? They just want to wander around, have a little sniff, do
Yeah.
their own thing, you
Yeah,
know,
that might be a good way
unirritated.
actually. Coco could even practice that, right? She could go to one of these private fields with a bunch of other dogs. Doesn't necessarily even have to be these same dogs if she doesn't wanna approach this person or that person's not interested.
Yep.
Get Coco together with some dogs that are not super down for playing. And then when those dogs kind of ignore Coco or growl or act in a similarly clear way about no, thank you, then you as that, as Coco's handler owner could go and interrupt Coco. So you could have like a drag leash on her or something like that so that you could easily interrupt if they're having some type of moment and just be consistent about, nope, she said no. That was one that you came up with as one of those fun little examples of just having a phrase that you're consistent about that is associated with your interruption so that they can learn down the road over some time and repetition that when you say that, you don't actually have to interrupt, they'll walk away themselves. Both you and I did that
Yeah.
with our own dogs.
Yeah. It works like a charm. That should be today's hack, actually.
Yeah,
They said no. Try and teach your dog how to disengage from things. And you can start by doing it around your house. If you have another dog, a cat or a rabbit or something that's in your house that's not interested in hanging out with your dog, you say, they said no. And then you just gently move them away from the animal, or it might even be a kid actually that doesn't
yeah,
want to play.
yeah,
Um, and just move them away gently and lovingly, but very clearly that we are not engaging right now. That worked really well for me because I had Juice was like Coco, very overly friendly and used to do these crazy. Do you remember those barrel rolls he would just
yes.
do, like rolling around? And my poor 16-year-old dog was just so terrified of him when he got wild. And I would just say, she said no. And then I'd move him away. And same thing with Ziggy as well, actually, both dogs. And he was
Yeah.
just trying to be friendly.
Yep, yep, and I've had to do the same thing with Early with, Prim because Prim, our little toy breed, has no interest in playing with her, and she would go up and literally poke the bear with her big Pyrenees paw, and Prim would be like, "Ah," you know, like, "She
Out.
said no,"
Yeah.
and Early's not even super pro-social, but she was a puppy, right? And so the other dog in
Yeah.
her house was, like, way too tempting to, leave alone and not provoke for funsies. But it worked great,
Yeah.
and so we've used it with the cats too.
It does. If you just have to keep repeating it. It's just like,
Yep.
teaching your kids to say please and thank you. It takes a little while, but it's actually really it really, really helps. Um, the other thought I had was, and this is a very human solution to this problem, is if all else fails, You could start a group chat with this woman and say, "Hey, what time do you go to the park most days? I'm gonna see if I can maybe come a different time. Can you maybe just text me when you go out or let me know?" Because that's another it's a simple solution, isn't it? It doesn't require any training. If it's just those 2 dogs that she's running up against, this could really just be a simple human fix.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's another great idea too, because, we can't expect that person to be interested in helping Coco develop some social skills. She probably just wants to walk her dogs. So, you can ask. You never know. You might be surprised that she'd be really into it. But
They
she
might be best
also may
friends.
say, no, forget about it. But
Yeah.
yes, I'd love to avoid you, but please give me your number and I'll tell you when I'm walking and you can just stay home till I'm done.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so post-it pivot time. This is the part of the show where we ask you to think about one small action that you would like to change about what you do when it comes to your dog. And you're going to write it down on a post-it note, so it's got to be that small, and you're going to stick it on your fridge, and then you're going to see how that actually impacts your relationship together. Okay, so we've talked about seeing who your dog is and accepting them for who they are. That is the key, isn't it, to every relationship. And if you feel like you need a bit of a brush up, then go back and check out our other episode on acceptance, because my goodness, it changes absolutely everything. So you might have a really friendly dog or you might have a really shy dog, and either way they may need you to step up and support them a little bit more. They might need to be taught how to disengage from things that do not want their attention. You might even need to bring a drag line with you when you go out on your walks, so that you have a little bit more ability to be able to coach your dog in those situations. You might also want to have more connection and communication with the people in your community so that you can work through some of those issues, because sometimes it's a team effort. Um, we've got to weigh up the pros and cons of being off leash and whether that really feels good for your dog. Maybe it's time to hire a private field and give yourself all a break, and enjoy nature, right? Some freedom and just peace.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, that is, the thing that I would emphasize the most for folks to kind of wrap this up is that, oftentimes, even though Coco may be Coco, no matter how much you meet Coco's needs, it may be that it's a bottomless pit of love, right? That's just gonna ooze out regardless of how much access we have to other dogs and frolicking through fields and all of that stuff. But it's likely to be worse if those needs aren't met, right? If you do have a dog that is oozing with social energy trying to meet everybody, probably that dog needs more playtime and access to other canines.
Yep, ask that question to yourself first. Am I delivering on that piece? Because if you put yourself in the dog's shoes again, I'm a really sociable person, and if somebody kept me locked up without any social interaction with people, I would go nuts. I
Yeah.
need my friends. I need my chatting time and my laughing time, and I like my alone time, but I really crave like social interaction with people, and it would send me batty.
Well, and that's where you and I are different, right? Because, like, whenever I hear what you're doing with your free time, you're always like, "Oh, I'm going to lunch and I'm going to dinner and I'm going to a show and I'm going on another trip with these friends." And I'm just like, "I'm staying home again with the husband on the same porch. That's it." It's my
Coco and Justine unite. We are
exactly.
together.
Yeah, exactly.
Ah, this has been a really fun episode. Well, thank you so much for joining us again. We will be back next Tuesday. We'd love your call, so don't forget to leave us a message and maybe you'll be featured on the show. So until next time, remember, your dog's not broken.
And neither are you.